How's it going, guys? My name's Landon Bischoff. This is my 2021 KTM 500 EXC-F. It is a 6 days edition, although you can't really tell too much. This bike has over 25,000 miles on it. And so that is quite a few bit of miles for a dirt bike. In today's video, I am gonna be discussing kind of 5 main topics. I'm gonna talk about what those 27K miles looked like, so you can get a better idea for what this bike has gone through. And then I'm gonna switch on over and talk a little bit about the maintenance history of this bike, the integrity of the engine, and just all the different components and parts and how well this bike is held up. Thirdly, I'll talk about the strengths and weaknesses of this bike. And then lastly, I'll talk about who I think should buy one of these bikes. So let's get right into it, guys. I bought this bike brand new in 2021 in my local dealership up in Eastern Idaho. It was the first motorcycle that I've ever bought brand new, and so it was really exciting for me. I personally love camping and I love motorcycles, specifically dirt bikes. And so I thought, holy cow, if I can mesh these two together, that would be an incredible combination. I saw people like Adam Ryman, who made his series Moto Nomads. And then I later discovered a guy named Aaron Steinman, who's a New Zealander guy. And he was the first person to ride a KTM 500 bike just like this all the way around the world. That just totally opened my mind to the idea of traveling on a bike like this. So out of those 27,000 miles, I would kind of divide it into 3 sections. And I'll start with the biggest chunk, which takes up about 65% of those miles, would be just normal off-road dirt road riding. So nothing crazy. We're not working the bike super hard, but we are on a dirt road. After that, it's pretty much an equal 17.5 split between highway miles or paved miles. And then the other one would be what I would consider hard enduro. So single track in Idaho or hard miles in the dunes. Things like that where the bike's working really hard. Really quick history of the bike. Across the entire US on this bike by going on the Arizona BDR, then the Utah BDR, and then the Idaho BDR. And then after that, I got real ambitious and I thought, okay, time to do a trip outside of the country. And I thought Mexico, and my plan was to visit every single state in Mexico. I figured it would take me maybe 4 to 5 months. I planned my route. That was about 11,000 miles. I mean, it was just zigzagging through mountains, and it was a lot. And that trip ended up being around 2 years, guys. It ended up morphing into all these things. I ended up going to the bottom of Panama. I visited every country in Central America. And so that's a little bit of the history of this bike and kind of what it's gone through. So it gives you a better idea of just how hard it's been worked and what the miles look like. Also, guys, all of these trips have been video documented, so you can go on my channel and watch all of it. You don't have to take my word for it, but all of those miles have been pretty much filmed, and so you can go and watch those. Alrighty, guys, let's get into the good stuff and talk about what went wrong with this bike, what's been the good, and a little bit about the maintenance history of it. So we'll start off firstly by talking probably about one of the biggest complaints that people have about this bike, and that is the oil maintenance interval. The manual calls for a very short oil change interval on this. Obviously, if you're traveling long distances, that doesn't really make sense. And so what I normally extend the oil change to is normally around 1,000 to 1,500 miles. And my strategy, guys, on that is really kind of just by now, I can kind of feel when the bike needs to be changed. As I'm shifting, as I'm going through the gears, I can feel the difference between good oil and oil with the viscosity of water in it. and I've ran this bike on oil like that. So it's been abused. And so I don't baby this thing a ton when it comes to oil. I also mostly just try to keep an eye on the color. And so I'll look through the people and I'll kind of, see if it looks too black or if it looks a little weird. I'll drop it. But on oil changes, I always drop every single bolt and I pull out every single screen and I clean the bike. So I never just drop like partial amounts of the oil. I take it all out and change the oil that way. By now, I kind of just know by the style of riding as well as the environment and the heat, how fast and how long that oil is going to last me. But I normally change it, like I said, anywhere between 1,000 to 1,500 miles. If I'm doing hard enduro stuff, I'm going to change it sooner than that, right? Or if I'm doing crazy sand for hundreds of miles in Baja, I might need to change it earlier, just depending on the heat and how hard the bike's getting worked. Also, while we're talking about oil, I use the paper KTM filters. In the future, I'll probably upgrade to a Takomoto one, the magnetic one that they have, but this bike has only ever had those paper filters in it. In terms of what oil do I use, I pretty much just use what's available to me. So pretty much always I can get KTM, like Moto Trek oil, wherever I'm at. But I've thrown Motul in it, I've thrown liquid moly, I've thrown in like some off-brand stuff that you find in like parts of Nicaragua, Central America. And so the bike, my experience is like, the bike's gonna be all right. I've also thrown in oils that aren't like the recommended weight per se, just when I've been in a bind a little bit. And my experience is the bike can handle it. Now guys, let's talk about the engine on this bike and how well it's done. For its weight, this bike produces an insane amount of power. I have it currently actually just stock. I haven't done anything crazy to the motor. Stock clutch, stock, all the internals are stock. This bike has one engine rebuild on it, and I did it not because the engine needed it, but because I made a huge personal mistake myself. I'm not gonna go into every single detail on it. You guys are welcome to watch the video. I'll put a link to it and kind of a picture right here. And so you can go and see what happened. But long story short, there's a couple of factors that add into this, but it's ultimately my fault. And so I was having all these issues with countershaft seals. And I couldn't figure out why. And then one day I was changing, and I was in Puerto Vallarta. I was changing it, and I actually paid a little bit more attention, and I saw that the splines were getting worn out. The splines on the countershaft where that sprocket connects started getting excessive wear. And essentially what causes that, it's a variety of things, but it can be from that chain tension being too tight, as well as that front sprocket has a washer that applies force on it. And Takomoto also sells one of these to kind of compensate for this problem. But over time, it can loosen up, and you're not getting the right amount of pressure on that sprocket, and it'll loosen up, and you just have all these little micro vibrations that will eat at those splines. The other problem is not having my weight set for the additional weight. And every time I'm compressing that suspension and kind of really pulling on that chain and pulling on that sprocket a little bit. The other part is not having a cush drive. So after that issue, Warp 9 sent me a cush drive, which was super nice of them. And I noticed a huge difference as well with that. And so to fix that countershaft, you have to split the case on the engine. And so we pulled the whole thing out. I took it to Guadalajara, to Moto Tres actually. Down there, they treated me super good. That happened at around 11,000 miles on the bike. And so in all honesty, it really did not need it. The bike was starting up first push every single time, felt super smooth. The engine felt strong, and it just 100% my fault and not the bike's fault. So just unfortunate that I wasn't really smart enough to know how to properly protect it from that. And so another thing I decided to do when we pulled the motor in Guadalajara is to reprogram this bike. Basically, those guys down there hooked me up with essentially flashing the stock ECU and getting me some new KTM mappings. Since they're down in Mexico, they don't have to be involved in all the regulations in the US. And so basically what they did was they made my gringo white boy bike into a Mexican. So this baby girl is a Mexican now. She's got KTM factory Mexico programming on her. And holy cow, guys, I noticed a huge difference when we reprogrammed it. Again, when I left, I just thought, let's just do a little 4-month thing, let's test it out. And so if I knew I was leaving for 2 years, I probably would have done something with Takomoto, but I didn't. But it ended up working out with those guys as well. Also, this bike comes from the factory with kind of like a spark suppressor and kind of some metal mesh on that exhaust. And so we pulled that as well. I had already had the reeds pulled, but we pulled that as well, and they just helped open the bike up, and it made a huge difference. I'm sure not as much as like a Vortex or a Get ECU, but I did notice a big difference when we reprogrammed it like that. All right, let's talk about the electrical system. One of the pros about this bike is that it is simple. So there's no ABS, there's no weird complicated electrical system that's gonna end up hurting you and complicating your life. Really, the only issues I've had with electrical system is I've had my fan go out a couple times. And what we ended up discovering was underneath the seat where your relays are, not the relay itself, not the fan relay itself, but underneath the wire going to the fan from that relay had broken off. And so I don't know if it was the seats pushing down and just like impacts from the seat that just tweaked it one day and crushed it and caused it to break, but that connection had broken inside. And so that was really hard for me to discover. Mechanics ended up discovering that for the first time in Guatemala. And then it happened again in Nicaragua. And then from there, it was just kind of easy to fix it. But that's kind of really been the only issue with electrical systems. I dropped this bike in a river in Honduras, totally fine. I have had quite a few issues with my trail tech, but that has nothing to do with the bike itself. That is more to do with the trail tech, and I'll talk about that in a different video if you guys want me to. This Moto-minded Baja Designs light kit hasn't given me any issues. Very impressed with the electrical system. Yeah, I really can't complain with electrical system. Never had to do anything with the stator. I only changed the spark plug once when I pulled the engine. And so other than that, it's pretty much never been touched. Going along with the electrical system, one thing I do want to also comment is the battery, guys. Like I said, this is a 2021 bike. It's still to this day has the stock battery in it. And so I guess like if you just keep riding these things, they just stay good. I kind of thought like, oh, I'm gonna need to throw like some fancy like zero gravity battery in it. I just thought, okay, well, when this one dies, I'll put one in. It's the stock battery. So the whole time I have never changed it. That is super impressive to me. This bike has always been ridden a lot and never really had like long months of just no riding. And so I think that makes a big difference, but stock battery, guys. So let's test it. Not bad for 27K. I mean, in terms of like normal wear and tear, I've done wheel bearings maybe twice. All of the swing arm and the suspension bearings in the back, those are all stock. Coming home from this long trip in Honduras, I had them do every single bearing, check them all and grease them all. And they were like, wow, yeah, the swing arm's fine. Like all the bearings up front, totally fine. And so in terms of like normal wear and tear stuff, it hasn't even been that problematic as well. To summarize on the maintenance and just overall the integrity of this bike, I have just been totally impressed. Honestly, just super grateful for the bike, how well it's performed. I travel alone a ton. And so having a reliable bike is really important to me, and it feels really good that this bike really hasn't ever stranded me. All right, guys, let's talk about the strengths and weaknesses of this bike. We'll go ahead and do the bad first. The first and biggest, like I would say, problem and weakness that this bike has is it gets hot. The bike runs hot. And you can say, oh, it's a performance bike, right? Like KTM, ready to race, you know? Doing long distance travel, I am stepping into like maybe doing something the bike wasn't created to do, but it is a street legal bike. And so as a street legal bike, I would kind of expect it to have some of those attributes as well. And so for example, if it's a hot day and you're in traffic and you can't like squeeze by, this bike will overheat. This bike will shoot out coolant and it's gonna overheat. The fan cannot keep up with cooling this bike off. If you get into some single track and it's a hot day, you're not moving very fast, maybe it's switchback stuff or really rock fields and it's a lot of clutch work, this bike's gonna overheat. That's been my experience. Again, obviously the weather has a lot to do with that. The terrain as well, like there's just some terrain that, you know, you can get some speed and get some wind going through your radiators. And so this bike is really susceptible to heat. And that is a huge negative in terms of long distance travel, where you got to go through cities. Sometimes if you're in traffic, you can't always just split the lane and the bike's going to overheat. The second weakness I would say is definitely that oil change interval. At the end of the day, it does bring some inconveniences. Now, I could sit here and sell you on the idea of like, it's really not a big deal, because it isn't. You know, it can be done. The oil can be swapped in maybe 30 to 45 minutes, right? By the time you go and get the oil and you drop it and pull your tools out, like it's not a super big deal, but there's just something really nice about not having to worry about it. And when you compare this to every other bike that is like maybe a dual sport or an adventure bike, if that's what you're trying to make this, it's just always going to be a hassle. But I say that mostly for talking to an audience and less for myself, where I travel so slow. I'm going off-road, I'm taking my time camping, you know, I film a lot of my travel, that takes up time. And so for me, the oil change thing, it really hasn't been an issue. But if I was someone who was like on a time schedule regularly and I was trying to cover lots of distance, it's just not it. Number 3 weakness of this bike, guys, is comfort. This is not a comfortable bike. You do not buy this bike to be sitting in luxury and, you know, like, it's just not comfortable. It's a single cylinder, like big bore, lots of vibration bikes, like it causes fatigue. This bike just wears you out. When you compare it to like a Tenere or like a GS, this bike's just not even, it's just never gonna come close to the level of comfort you're gonna feel on those bikes. And so that is a huge weakness. Even with a wind guard, a lot of them don't do it perfectly. And so you're gonna feel more fatigue with that wind hitting you. And then again, it's just that vibration. And you can buy fancy setups, but it's still there. You feel it sitting down. And so I would consider that a weakness of this bike. It is just not very comfortable. The 4th weakness I would say that this bike has is its height. And so that's really just gonna affect people that are maybe a little bit shorter. I'm 6 foot, and so it's okay for me, but every once in a while, I'll be in an off-roading situation, and when I have my big duffel bag on here and all the additional weight, sometimes the angle and just how high I am, it is just super hard to manage. Where a lot of those adventure bikes, they're sitting a lot lower and they have enough clearance, and it's actually pretty manageable, that weight, compared to how high this bike sits off the ground. If you're on the shorter side and you're considering this bike, I would take that into mind, that it's hard managing that height. And then the last weakness of this bike, I would say, is the price. I bought this bike brand new for 13 grand in 2021. Like I said, it is a 6 days. And for 13 grand, guys, you can buy a lot of bikes. The other problem with that is you have to put in even more money. On the cheap end, maybe 2 to 3 grand more, just to kind of make it an adventure bike. And I'm on the expensive end, anywhere from like 5 to 8 more grand to make this thing what you want it to be. And so the price range is just a huge weakness on that, where you can access so many different bikes for that price range. You could just fly to any part of the world, buy a Chinese motorcycle for $1,500, ride that thing as far as you want for months. You have access to all the parts of that local kind of like economy, and then you just sell it or just give it away when you're done. And you could do that potentially 10 times and still be at that range of this bike. Woo, that's good. Alrighty guys, moving into the strengths of this bike. In my opinion, the #1 biggest strength of this bike is its weight. This bike weighs 265 pounds. And when you combine that with the 41 horsepower that this bike has, it is just an insane machine. When you compare that to like a KLR that weighs 500, a Tenere 700 that's like 465, the DRZ, all these bikes, some of those less power and more weight, this bike just stands out. After having traveled thousands of miles with luggage and doing the off-road thing and the camping thing, I'll just say it like this. The lighter your bike, the safer your bike is. There's just no way around it, guys. Not only thinking about like, this thing could fall on me, to if I drop this in really sketchy scenarios, can I even pick it up? Like that idea doesn't really exist on this bike. There's never really a time when I won't be able to pick this bike up. It's 260, it's meant to be dropped. It's a dirt bike. That is a huge safety aspect. The lightness of this bike brings into a huge safety aspect, in my opinion, comparing it to every other adventure bike. And I think that's really cool. And then moving into the second strength that pretty much goes hand in hand with the weight is the power, guys. This bike has 41 horsepower. That weight to power ratio is just insane. And so when you combine those two, you get a off-road and just adventure beast. This bike will always have more potential in the off-road scene than I will be able to give it and handle. Only thing that limits me in terms of where I can go on this bike is not the bike itself, it's me and my skill. And that is kind of a really cool and fun idea, that the bike will go anywhere that you can take it. The third big strength of this bike is the suspension, guys, and the clearance. Holy cow. Like, there's never really anything you have to worry about. If you're going through rock fields, if you're doing steep hill climbs, if you're going down big drop-offs, rarely, and I mean rarely, am I hitting my skid plate, even with the weight. And so lastly, to kind of wrap up this bike's strengths, I'm gonna make the statement, the very bold statement, that this is the most impressive adventure bike that money can get you. Nothing comes close to it, and this bike is just super fun to ride. And that is just a super fun feeling, knowing that you're on a bike that can literally take you anywhere, and it's more so that you have to be disciplined to not get yourself in dumb situations. What motorcycle is gonna be able to compete with a dirt bike? That's all it comes down to, right? All right, guys, moving on to topic number 4, I'm just gonna quickly name some of my favorite modifications that I've done on this bike. We're gonna start with number 1, which is this Seat Concepts seat. If there's anything that you have to get for this bike if you wanna do long distance travel on it, it's the seat. You don't need fancy GPSs, you don't need fancy lights, all this stuff, you need this seat. And it blows my mind when I look at the stitching on this and just how well this thing has held up over literally thousands and thousands of miles. It has no tears in it, it's really not even discolored. Even with my luggage, and you think of right here on this corner, guys, where this has just been rubbing and vibrating. There's no holes, there's no issues with this seat, and that's just super impressive. Number 2 favorite thing, I'm gonna go ahead and go with the Baja Designs light. It's so bright, and it just makes being out in the desert at night so fun. There's some weakness to it where when you're in cities, you can kind of get into some weird things because you can't use your brights because it is just way too much. And the low is kind of like not enough sometimes. But man, I just love the way it looks, and it is just a great light. My last favorite modification on this bike would be the Warp 9 Cush Drive. Kevin, one of their owners, reached out to me. I didn't have really any social media presence at this time, and was just a super kind guy and sent this to me. Since then, I've gone and seen him a variety of times, and he's just a super solid guy. And I like buying things from businesses that have cool and good people behind them. Now, to wrap it all up, guys, to answer our final and last question, should you buy this bike? Who is this bike perfect for, and is it worth owning? I'll say one thing first before anything else. If you have a lot of money, just get the bike. Like, don't overcomplicate it. The reality is, if you like motorcycles, you should know by now that like one perfect bike, it just doesn't exist. Motorcycle guys, and you can show this to your wife, you need like multiple bikes, maybe like 7 or 8 bikes. Me thinking about myself, like just dirt bikes alone, I need like a 4-stroke powerful bike for the dunes, and then I need like my 2-stroke like KTM 300 for the single track, and then I need like a bike like this for like my moto camping trips. And then we move into like, oh, I want to do like a weekend trip with my boys, and I want to be on like a nice highway cruising bike, and I want a street bike, and like, it's just, you need multiple bikes, guys. And so if you have a lot of money, I'll make it really simple. Just get the bike and you'll use it for something. Now, stepping into kind of more of being thoughtful and intentional, who should get this bike? If you want to go on the most insane adventure of your life, off-road, buy this bike. For long distance traveling on a motorcycle, this isn't the bike that I would choose every time. And so who should buy this bike is really the person that is going to be prioritizing riding like this. You're outside, you're in the dirt, you're off-road, maybe even you're going to hit some single track as well, or you just want to be camping like crazy. This bike's going to let you access insane places in the outdoors that you're just not going to be able to access with a heavier bike. Another point I'll make on that is, currently in your life, if you prioritize like adventure over comfort, this might be the right bike for you. I'm in my 20s, guys. I do not care about the seat being uncomfortable. I don't care about the wind hitting me and the vibrations, right? I know I mentioned those were weaknesses, but I'm talking for me now at this point. I don't prioritize comfort. What I prioritize is the adventure. And this bike is a tool for accessing adventure. That feeling that I'm trying to get of adrenaline and exploring, this bike helps me and allows me to get that. Now, remember, the bike is just a tool. You don't have to have this bike to access adventure, to have adrenaline. It's just a tool for helping you get there. To recap, the bike's been incredible for me. Again, over 27,000 miles. To finish up the video here, I'll say this. Over the course of the next few weeks, I'm gonna be uploading a series of videos showcasing everything that I've learned over the past 2 years of living off of this motorcycle. Consider giving me a follow, as well as if you'd like to see every mile this bike has been on, click subscribe and you can start watching my videos and get a better idea for how capable these bikes are. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you guys on the next one, and cheers.